I've fired definitely over 100, maybe close to 200 people.
This was an extremely gendered workplace.
Disgusting.
The stereotypes are true.
2025 is going to be the year of Agentic AI.
I was fired from my very first job.
You need to remember, if you're losing your job, whether that's part of a layoff or getting fired, is to not...
Hello, what's up everybody, and welcome to Legit AF. We are the husband and wife team that talks about real issues in a no BS way, navigating the personal and the professional, and how to build a successful life and career in the modern world. You can catch our podcast with new episodes every single Tuesday morning across YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I am Jenny alongside my very sexy hunk of a man, Pav. Hello.
Sexy hunk of a man. I like that.
Did you write this?
I did.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I like the compliment, starting off the day with a compliment. We should just do a full 30 minutes where you just talk about how great I am.
Just like a love fest?
I think that'd be great.
What would the category start with?
Reasons why my husband is the best man on the planet.
Yeah, but what if my dad listens? Oh, didn't expect that.
There's always that challenge of, having to make sure that you're on par with the father-in-law.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a stay-at-home dad. I think I was one of the rare kids growing up in the 90s that had a dad at home.
Yeah. So, I think it's always about trying to make sure that if he can build something well, I can build something well. If he can fix something, I have to be able to fix something at home as well.
Yeah, the TikTok I saw a couple of years back, I love it. It just shows like every time a husband does something, the wife looks at him and goes, "My daddy does it better."
I think as a millennial, I do okay. I'm pretty handy around the house. I fix things every now and then.
Yeah, you actually, once we bought a house and we had like real land and, actual things we need to fix, you really picked up a lot.
It's also surprisingly fun. It's just very rewarding being able to fix things or build things on your own. And I'm not talking like IKEA furniture here, okay? I've actually done a fair bit of work around the house. I've made this place our own. Okay,
let's just to keep the ego stroking up, because this is going to be a spicy episode. Tell us your most proud moment of home buildership.
Oh, wow. That's a really good one. Well, let me think about it for a second. Okay. So, I did a lot of the work around the yard and things like that. So, we had to put up all that fencing. Remember when we first moved in and the dogs were escaping?
Yeah.
Constantly?
Yeah. So for those that aren't familiar, we were in the foothills in Los Angeles, and I grew up in the country. I just want to be totally clear. I grew up in the country in Canada. My town had like 2,000 people. So I thought it was rural. And I could not believe when I moved to Los Angeles, how many wild animals there were. There's so much more here. I mean, we literally have coyotes in our yard almost every single morning.
One of our dogs, he is a true escape artist. It must have taken me a week to put the fencing up around the entire perimeter of the yard. Yeah. And we've got trees, we've got all this like natural shrubbery and things like that. That's right up along the fence line. So I'm back there, in the bushes, covered in dirt, trying to put this fencing up. And by the time all was said and done, Alfie, our dog, he just figured out how to climb over it and escape into the neighbor's yard anyway. So all of that work was basically for nothing.
Okay, I want to be clear. Papa's really underplaying this. Not only did he figure out how to climb it, when you put chicken wire in and the dog is 12 or 13 pounds, he actually used it like as a ladder. So I caught him. We couldn't figure out how he was getting out. And I caught him one day when our neighbor was like, "Hey, Alfie is trying to get in the yard again." And I go look, and he's figured out a way to actually use each of the little circles in the chicken wire as a place to put his paw and climbed it like a ladder.
I think that's just how he is. Now that he's a little bit older, he's settled down a little bit. He's not escaping as much.
Yeah, he's 13.
Yeah. And he's tagged. So we've got the GPS on him. He's never going to get too far.
Don't worry. We're good pet parents. Okay. So I know today's topic is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah,
and
I'm excited about this one.
For folks that don't know, obviously, Pav and I have been in the tech industry for quite a long time. I'm a VC. He's been building startups for a long time. But this in particular is a topic that I think we all need to be paying attention to in
Definitely.
2025. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm gonna let you take it from here.
So I'm going to try and keep my ranting to a minimum today because I have a lot to say on this topic. And what we're really talking about today is losing your job, getting laid off, or getting fired. So Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, he recently said that the company won't be hiring any new software engineers in 2025 due to a 30% productivity boost from AI. And there's been a rumor for a few months now that FANG companies are going to be doing significant layoffs in 2025. And even Sam Altman recently posted in his year-end or year-starting wrap that in 2025 is going to be the year of Agentic AI. And if you don't know what Agentic AI is, it's essentially AI that has the ability to take action on its own behalf. So you say, go book me a flight, and it can actually go and do that on your behalf. And he said, this is the year that we're going to be seeing that. So we're not specifically talking about AI today. And really, this is going to apply to anyone that will lose their job as a result of AI, has lost their job, has been fired, or just general displacement in the workforce as the market dynamics changes. So I thought it might be just helpful for people to understand what to do in this situation. If you find yourself in the situation, how to navigate losing your job and how to navigate being fired.
And why are you the exact perfect person to explain this?
Because I've fired a lot of people. I think in my career, I've fired definitely over 100, maybe close to 200 people. Some of that has been specific individuals that I've had to let go for various reasons. I've also done layoffs with large groups of people, particularly during the pandemic. That was something that I had to handle. So this is something that I'm very familiar with. I've been in the room with people that are losing their jobs. I've had to deliver the news to people all the time. I mean, it's just par for the course when you do what I do.
Yeah. And so since you're a chief people officer, literally the executive that is in charge of hiring and firing, you are exactly the person we need to hear from today. But I think, before we dive into the do's and don'ts of what happens when you're going to get fired, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's okay if you get fired. At some point or another in your career, there is a really, really good chance you're going to get fired, right? We all get fired. I've been fired. I have. Yeah. I mean, I've been.
Why did you get fired? What happened? Tell us.
Okay. Y'all ready for this? Let's sit in. Let's break the ice a little bit. I will tell you how I got fired. I was fired from my first job.
Okay. Great way to kick off the career. I guess that was pre-career.
Yeah. Okay. So I was fired from my very first job. I worked at a hardware store in my small town.
Yeah.
I was a cashier. I was 16 years old. I think I was in 10th grade at the time. And I remember, there's a lot of things I learned from this job. I remember how all of the women that worked in the store at our little hardware store were in the front. We all did cash. We were all the front of the store, and we were mostly just doing merchandising. We were doing, facing of the products, and we were manning the cash register. And in the back of the store, where all of the different equipment and the different rentals were happening, were the boys. So that was the very first thing that I realized was, wow, this was an extremely gendered workplace. Yeah. And the stereotypes are true. And I remember that my boss, I'm not going to say his name. So one of the things we do on Legit AF is we tell a lot of stories. We know a lot of people. I'm not going to say his name, but he treated the men and women different. And I was 16 years old and I could tell that. And I was also a little anarchist wearing Sex Pistols shirts. And I was also, a little bit of a rabble rouser myself. And so for me, I ended up, having a couple words with him over my first kind of 6 months, where I would kind of ask why we were being told to do things while the guys would be sitting there not having to do anything. And so he didn't really like me. He could tell I was going to be a pain in the butt for him. Okay. this is like so on brand. This is like the Jenny origin story. And I ended up finding out one day that a girl that I was working with, who was the exact same age as me, so she was 16 as well, we were both clocking in and out to get our pay stubs. And I remember noticing, I don't know why I saw hers, but she had more money than I did.
Okay, so I see where we're headed here.
Okay, and this is the first time Pav is hearing the story as well. So I ended up finding out that she was being paid a different minimum wage than me. So where I'm from in Ontario, in Canada, they have what's known as a student minimum wage and a general minimum wage. And we were both students at the time. And I remember looking at her pay and going, why are you getting an extra, I think it was like a quarter an hour, but obviously when you're 16, that's a lot of money. And she, she wasn't really sure why. And so I ended up taking it up to the front of store management, asking, why am I getting paid less? And guess what they did? They decided that the best way to handle it was they accidentally were paying general minimum wage to some of the students, and other students were getting paid student minimum wage. So they were getting the lower rate. They decided to lower all the other students' pay rather than giving me an extra quarter.
Wow. Poor management.
Literally, I remember I was 16 years old. I could not believe it. And of course, it turned all of my coworkers against me because I, ended up making them lose money, and everyone was really frustrated.
Amateur move. Amateur move.
On
But
my part?
from your management.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I didn't last much longer there. I ended up getting pulled in to the front of the office and was told that I was not prioritizing cleaning my cash register, and this would be my last night there. And it was my very last shift. I'd never had any write-ups in my record. I never did anything wrong that required any sort of corrective action. I was just told, you are not prioritizing how to clean your cash register correctly. We don't have any more work for you here.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah. I learned a lot. And it really, I think, that lesson is something that I've kept with me, even though I'm in my 30s now. I'm a VC, and every time I go back to my small town, I like to kind of stop in there at the hardware store and see my old boss still there manning the cash register with the next generation of high schoolers. And then I fly back to Los Angeles.
So let's dive into this topic. But before we do, real quick, I just want to make one note about what you said. It is not illegal to share or to talk to your coworkers about how much money you make. So if you're working out there at all and anybody tells you that you can't talk about your pay, there's no law that prevents that, right? So you didn't do anything wrong. We're talking about poor management here that made a dumb decision and lowered everybody else's pay. And ultimately that cost you your job. So, okay, so let's dive into this. I think one place that I really want to start is let's talk about that moment itself, right? The number one thing that you need to remember if you're losing your job, whether that's part of a layoff or getting fired, is to not take any action on anything if you don't have to in that moment. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't do anything unless you are legally required to do so. So if you're giving your computer back or any of those things, giving your key card, those are things that you have to do, but you are not required to sign a document right then and there. If somebody's trying to get you to sign a document in the moment, a separation agreement or some type of NDA, you are not required to do that by law. So when emotions are running high, when you're in shock, I really just recommend take a breath, take a step back, say thank you for letting me know, thank you for the opportunity, and leave when you're asked to leave. And then you've got the time to actually process everything that you're going through, think about what happened. And then once you calm down a little bit, you can actually start making decisions around whatever's going on, whatever separation agreement or severance agreement they've asked you to sign. So just want to start there. I think it's important for people to remember to just not make a decision in the moment.
So the number one piece of advice is do not sign anything that you don't have to. Severance agreements are law, or are they not law? So
they're not law.
Okay.
There's certain things that have to happen depending on where you live. You have certain payouts, getting your last paycheck, so on and so forth. In California, if you're getting let go, typically they have to pay you that same day. In most states around the United States, they can do it on the next regular payroll cycle. So, up to 2 weeks or so. Those are things that have to happen, right? But separation and severance, those are things that are optional, right? Here's the thing about severance, and I'm going to put this really bluntly, and I don't think most HR people would even say it like this, but they're giving you money because they want you to sign a document. That's the trade, right? So if you're getting fired and they're pushing you to sign a separation agreement that's got all kinds of legal language in it, it's probably because they feel like that you are a risk, that you know something, or that they know that they're not firing you under the best circumstances. Maybe they're concerned about you coming after them. The harder they push, the more leverage you have, frankly, I think. So think about what your signature is worth to the company, because they're giving you money in exchange for you releasing them from all kinds of liabilities and things like that. That's what a separation is, right? I recognize that's a, glass half empty take. A lot of companies just want to do right by their employees, especially during layoffs. But fundamentally, you're trading your signature for cash.
And I actually have a friend right now who's negotiating a severance agreement with Fang, with one of the companies in Fang. So major tech company. She had a very significant role there. And they said to her, in 72 hours, this severance expires, which I believe is kind of like the common thing they tell you. They want to put your feet to the fire. They want you to be scared that you're going to lose out on this money, because in this moment, you are hearing for the first time you're cut from the team. Like, you're not going to have any more paychecks coming. So it's really easy for you to clamor to the first amount of money that's offered to you. But guess what? They sent another severance offer after that 72 hours because she is a significant risk to them for litigation. And so I think one of the things that's really important to understand if you get a severance agreement is that they say it's a final offer, but if they are pushing you to sign, final offer doesn't always mean final offer.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm just going to run this by my attorney and get back to you.
That's the number one thing you say. And if they won't let you do that, there's something going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason why you can totally do that, right? There's no law saying that you can't run your severance agreement by your attorney.
Exactly. So in terms of severance, okay, a couple things here. A severance agreement has to be different depending on age, right?
So not the severance necessarily, but really just if you're over 40, again, depends on the state. But at the end of the day, there are certain requirements that have to be met. You have to give people of a certain age a certain amount of time to review the document. I believe it's 21 days in California. And then once they sign, there's a small period of time where they can actually rescind that signature and say, I've changed my mind. I don't want to go by this document anymore.
Okay. So for folks that are over 40, please understand that you actually might have more rights than your other coworkers. And so if you're in a mass layoff and you all get the same document, there's potentially they have missed something. And we have seen that before.
There's all kinds of things with mass layoffs that are, different than just losing your job. But at the end of the day, every case is different, and you should take the time to understand your situation, know what rights you have. And that's why you're not making a decision then in the moment, because you might be waiving your right to something and not even realize it because you're just in the heat of the moment, you're upset, and you sign a document for cash.
Okay. So what are the do's if you're getting fired?
So look, it's 2025. We're living in a different world. Once you lose your job, it's really important to take the time to set yourself up for success for whatever the next thing is that you're going to be doing. So updating your resume, take the time to do it, add your current role to your resume. I think that's the easy part. More importantly, reach out to people at your former employer that you know, that you trust, that you could potentially use for references moving forward. Even if you got fired, don't be shy about reaching out to folks and see who are my friends at the company, who are people that have worked with me that I know can be a good reference. It's always important to have those people lined up, because as soon as you have something, you want to be able to call on those people to validate that you're who you say you are and that they actually like you and that you're pleasant to work with. And then update your LinkedIn.
So hold on, let me just pause that for a second. I think it's really important people hear this. Even if you get fired or laid off from a company, you can still use references from that company.
Yeah, of course. your references can be whoever you want them to be. It's largely a formality. They're just people that can speak to how well you work. And different employers, when you're interviewing, are going to ask for different types of references. There's no hard rule for who or what a reference is supposed to be.
And that also means put it on your resume, even if you get fired or laid off.
Absolutely. It's still your experience. You still put in the time. You still did the work. It should be on your resume.
Okay. So any other do's, or should we get to the don'ts?
Well, I mentioned updating your LinkedIn, right? Make sure that you're actually putting yourself out there. I think it's important to remember, especially in this modern world that we live in, a job's not just going to show up at your doorstep. You're going to have to start putting yourself out there. And I get it, right? Especially if you've been fired, you've got your tail tucked in between your legs, you're nervous about getting back into the job market, you're worried about, did I actually do something wrong? Maybe I'm not good enough. All of those things are normal. All of those things are natural. You're just going to have to push past that and put yourself out there so that people can actually start seeing you again, and make yourself look attractive for your next employer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, those are actually both topics we'll dive into in another podcast and deeper about the psychology and like getting over being fired and getting back out there, and also how to do personal branding. What are some of the don'ts?
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the biggest don'ts, and I just kind of put this in the like vengeance and revenge category.
Yeah.
The one thing you don't want to do is anything that could potentially jeopardize your ability to claim unemployment, to get your severance, or just anything that might violate your confidentiality agreement with the company. So I'll give you the classic example, right? You lose your job. Typically, especially if you're getting fired and there's this dramatic exit, you want to be able to retain all the documentation that you have that proves that you didn't do anything wrong, or that your manager is a jerk, or, they did something that was inappropriate. I understand wanting to do that, and I understand wanting to build your case for yourself, but it's really important that you don't do that in a way that violates your confidentiality with the employer. So I know people that were losing their jobs, and what they did was they emailed correspondence that they had from their work email to their personal email so that they could retain those records. What does that do? It creates a paper trail that the employer can then point to and say, see, you were sharing company documentation with yourself on your personal email. You're violating your confidentiality agreement with the company. You're not eligible for your severance. We now have a good reason for firing you, and you're not going to get anything from us. So you're opening yourself up to risk by doing things like that. Just avoid taking those kinds of vengeful actions, because at the end of the day, it could just cost you everything.
So number one thing to not do when you are getting fired, and the biggest mistake you see people make, is forwarding emails to themselves. Instead, you can always go to the save as PDF and save a PDF of the email.
Take a screenshot, save a PDF. Don't leave a paper trail is basically what I'm saying here. Make sure that you do these things in a way that doesn't create a paper trail. Use Bluetooth on your phone, use AirDrop if you've got an iPhone and a Mac, and send it to yourself that way. That doesn't create a paper trail. Sometimes that also creates a paper trail, especially if you've got computers that have all kinds of software on it that tracks every single movement that you do. You just have to be careful about this stuff. Worst case scenario, you can always take your phone, hold it up to your screen, take a picture of the screen. That's not going to create a paper trail. So you just have to be careful and be thoughtful about what you're doing, and make sure that it's not done in a way that can be traced back to you in a way that you're violating your agreement with the company.
Especially when it comes to big tech companies, these are the things that they are looking for so that they can find ways to not have to pay out your severance.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to set yourself up for a situation where, even though everything that you're saying might be correct and might be true, you went against something that you agreed to when you joined the company by signing a certain document.
What are some of the other quick kind of most common don'ts that people do?
I would say in general, just avoid burning any bridges. Even if you're in the right and you're working for a terrible monster of a manager and they did everything wrong, it's important not to burn those bridges, because you don't know how those things can come back and bite you in the butt later. So it's hard to take the high road. I get it, but it's important to try and minimize the damage that you're creating on your way out the door, because you don't know the extent of that damage, because sometimes it takes years for those things to play out.
Also, You have no idea when you might need that person again. And you also don't know the whole story. So your manager, who you might be, thinking is the devil and has done this to you, you have no idea what they're going through. It might turn out that they were also, subjected to something as well. I've had past workplaces where turns out, a CEO had been abusing my manager and I had no idea.
Yeah. If you're working at a terrible place, you're not alone and you're not the only person going through that. So it's better to recognize, especially if you've got issues with middle management, those people are just part of that system too. So they may be your ally in the future, right? As long as they're not doing something egregious or illegal or something that is just really unacceptable. If they're just a bad manager and you don't like working with them, that might just be because they're part of the environment that they're in, not necessarily that there's something wrong with them.
This might be a controversial take, but the people who are firing you and you see as your enemies in one company could really turn out to be your allies in your next job.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Okay. So, I think we covered like all the basics on that one. Those are really the important things that I think everybody should know and understand. If you're enjoying the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or honestly, anywhere where you get your podcasts. You know what your favorite podcast listening tool is. Just find us there.
We're here to give you the gold nuggets that we wish we had when we were 20. All right. So my favorite part of the pod, it's time to move on to Legit AF or Lame AF. This is where we cover some quick topics and talk about whether they are legit or lame. What do we got?
So the first one, expensive weddings.
Lame. I'm not even gonna make a hesitation.
Why
that
are they
is lame AF. Weddings are okay. This
Here we go. Settle in for a rant. Here we go.
We got married at a courthouse and we went to a Chick-fil-A drive-through and got chicken nuggets for our wedding dinner. Okay. Wouldn't get those today. Don't worry. But I think that there is such a lack of the right priorities with some people, and they just so badly want the Instagrammable moment.
Right.
When I first saw the will you be my bridesmaids packages that people started getting, I could not believe it. But it's because people want to make themselves an Instagram star. They want to be the star of their own lives. And so I understand that you think that this is one of the most important moments of your life, and it is for many people, but you don't have to break the bank, and it absolutely should not be the expense of getting a home. Put that money towards something else useful. Micro weddings are the new trend. I'm telling you, it's happening. So expensive weddings, lame AF.
Just go to the courthouse and get married, or go to your church or your religious institution.
Backyards.
And just do it there. And don't bother with all the fancy stuff. Set yourself up for a financially successful life and save that money, invest it in the stock market, and you'll be better off. You don't need to spend all your money on an expensive wedding just for 100%. Some photos.
Absolutely. And just keep in mind too that, that money can go towards something else more important. And maybe at 10 years, you can do a 10-year anniversary and have that big wedding when you have a little bit more money and financial stability. We actually upgraded my wedding ring, fun fact, a little bit later in our careers. So
you love to show off your upgraded wedding ring.
There you go. All right. What else we got?
Okay. I think we have time for one more. So black licorice.
Yo, are you just you just pick the hottest button issues for me this week. Black licorice, I'm so in where my Danes and Nordic Europeans at. I am obsessed with black licorice. It's also really good for you. Just putting that out there too. So legit AF.
Black licorice is disgusting.
Monster.
It is absolutely awful. It's tolerable if you just dump a bunch of sugar into it, but I just don't understand how anybody could possibly enjoy that as a treat.
They have salted black licorice over in Europe. Amazing.
That sounds even worse because it's just disgusting black licorice plus salt.
Black licorice, legit AF.
Okay, well,
Dash Jenny.
Hard disagree on that one. I think that's all the time we have. You want to bring us home? You want to land the plane?
So if you have got any comments or topics you'd like to see us cover, what you enjoyed about today's conversation, what you learned, what your hot takes on everything we had to say are, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. That's right. Facebook's having a renaissance with Legit AF Pod, or you can always drop us a line on our site, legitafpod.com. As always, you can catch our podcast with new episodes every single Tuesday morning across YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're here to provide interesting, valuable content, and we're doing it in a joyful way. And we hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
Peace out.
See ya.